Hey guys, I'm cmasupra, and today I have some information about War Thunder tanks for you guys. Yes, tanks and not planes. Tanks are supposed to be coming out towards the end of November, but we're already getting information about them. So yesterday, the tech trees for the Germans and the Russians were released, and in this video today, I want to go over these tech trees. We can take a look into the mind of Gaijin and see what they're giving us with tanks and see what they have planned for tanks and stuff like that. So let's go over the German tech tree first. With this tech tree is split into 5 columns. The first 2 are assault gun and tank destroyers. These are your turretless tanks. The last 3 are your turreted tanks, which are light tanks, medium tanks, and heavy tanks, your basic 3 classes for tanks. So under the assault gun column, we have a whole bunch of Stug 3s, and then at the very end we have a Stu 3 with an H instead of a G. It's basically a Stug, but instead of being more of an anti-tank tank, it is more of an anti-infantry tank, which is a bit interesting because we're not going to be seeing infantry in War Thunder, so it'll be interesting to see what role all of these tanks get, especially with the H, the Stu. Under the tank destroyers column, we have the Hetzer, we have the Stug 4, and then we have a couple of Jagdpanzer 4s. We also have the heavier tank destroyers like the Jagdpanther and the Jagdtiger, which look very similar. And then we also have the Ferdinand and the Elephant, which are very similar as well. For your turreted tanks, we have under light tanks, we have some very light tanks. We have Panzer IIs and also some Panzer 35 and 38Ts. Under medium tanks, we have a whole bunch of Panzer IIIs, a whole bunch of Panzer IVs, and a whole bunch of Panzer Vs, plus a Panther II. In case you don't know, the Panzer V is the Panther, in case you don't know by its Panzer V name. And I must say that I am really excited for this third column under the medium tanks, because I am a huge fan of the Panther. I really don't know why, but it is my favorite tank in World War II out of every country, so I am really excited for that column right there. Under heavy tanks, we have 2 Tigers and 3 Tiger IIs, it would seem. They're all called the Panzer VIs, but they're Tigers and Tiger IIs. So overall, we have a pretty good mix of light tanks and heavy tanks. And, of course, tanks in between the light tanks and heavier tanks. Now let's go over the Russian tech tree. This one is separated into only 4 columns, not 5 like the German tech tree is. The first column, self-propelled guns, is basically the combination of assault guns and tank destroyers. It just combined it into one column for all your turretless tanks, which are self-propelled guns. So these 3 columns are, or rather the 4 columns are self-propelled guns, and then your standard light tanks, medium tanks, and heavy tanks. So let's go over the self-propelled guns first. We have the ZIS 30, which is a very weird looking tank compared to the normal tanks we're used to seeing, because the gun is quite open over there. Then we also have a couple of Su-76s, a couple of Su-85s, and then we have all of these larger tank destroyers that we're used to seeing from the Soviets anyways, like the Su-100, the 122, the 152, and then the ISU-122 and the ISU-152. So we have some really heavy and really light self-propelled guns here. It looks like these will be spanning all the tiers and not just early tiers or anything like that. Under light tanks, we have a whole bunch of light tanks. Who would have guessed it, right? So we have the T-26, the T-40, 50, 60, 70, and 80. So quite a few T light tanks in there. Then we also have a couple of BT light tanks. We have the B5, or rather the BT5, the BT7, BT7A, and BT7M. And this one in particular looks like it has a really short, big gun, so it might serve a purpose similar to the Stu 3 that the Germans have. We'll have to wait and see about that. Who knows where any of these tanks will be tiered, who knows how well they'll work, who knows how realistic they'll be. Because trying to find real, solid information about tanks is quite difficult. It's the same reason that a lot of planes in this game don't have proper flight models yet. It's just getting the information is so difficult to do. Under medium tanks, we have another tank with a really short gun. Looks the same as this BT-7A's gun. You have the T-28, the T-28E, so a couple of T-28s there. Then we have a whole bunch of T-34s. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 T-34s. And then going post-World War II, somewhat, we have the T-44, and then going really post-World War II, we have the T-54s. We have 3 of them in the game. Some people are complaining about the Russians having T-54s, but really, this game is not a World War II game. That's the main complaint people are giving, is it's not a World War II tank, but this is not a World War II game. If this was a World War II game, we wouldn't have MiGs and Sabres in the game, nor would we have biplanes. So, this game is not a World War II game. Quit complaining about the T-54 being in here. As long as it's balanced against the Germans, it's fine. Under heavy tanks, sorry for that little rant, but under heavy tanks, we have the T-35 rather, not T-34. We also have a whole bunch of KVs under here in this first column. We have KV-1, 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 so 3 KV-1s, different variants, obviously. And then we also have the KV-2, which is a rather odd-looking tank, as many people would say. And then we also have the KV-85 at the end of the KV line. And then after the KVs came the ISs in this column. So we have the IS-1, a couple of IS-2s, an IS-3, and an IS-4. So it'll be a very good spread, just like with the Germans, of light tanks and heavy tanks, especially with how many light tanks there are in terms of these Ts. T-40 to T-80, I guess also T-26 included. But overall, like I said, very good spread of light and heavy tanks, and it'll be very interesting seeing how the light tanks serve a purpose in this game, because if they were to be balanced against their penetration skill with the gun, how much armor they have, things like that, light tanks would be in the early tiers and heavy tanks would be at the end of the ending tiers. But Gaijin may not do it that way. They may do it by year, in which case there were light tanks and heavy tanks serving together. And it'll be interesting to see what purpose the light tanks serve, because the light tanks are obviously going to have some trouble penetrating heavier tanks from the opposition. Like, say you have Russians versus Germans, you're going to have a lot of trouble penetrating a Tiger II with a T-40. I'm just going to say that. You're going to have a lot of trouble penetrating that Tiger II. So, I mean, that's a terrible example because they didn't serve in the same time period, but just as an example, you're going to have a lot of trouble, and so it'll be interesting if the light tanks and heavy tanks serve together, or if they're going to be tiered so that they never serve together. The light tanks are at low tiers, the heavy tanks are at high tiers. What is Gaijin going to do for tiering these tanks? Nobody really knows yet, but I am very interested in finding what purpose the light tanks serve. Maybe they'll serve a purpose of detracking the heavier vehicles, maybe getting around them so that the heavier vehicles have to turn the turrets around, and then the heavy tanks can come and shoot the rear armor of the turret. They can do something like that. I don't know. We'll have to see what purpose they serve, though. Now you will notice in these tech trees that there are no AAA vehicles, there are no anti-air vehicles in either of these tech trees. I'll let you look again, there's no anti-air vehicles. You know, Gaijin have said that they are going to be bringing them into the game later, so I guess the reasoning for that would be that Gaijin is probably still figuring out how they want to handle AAA, because player-based AAA going against planes is going to be very deadly, because it can pretty much one-shot planes if they get lucky. So it can be very deadly having player-based AAA, so they're probably still figuring out how they want to handle AAA for being player-controlled. One thing you may have noticed is that some of the tanks here, such as the Su-76s, could be used as artillery pieces and were used as artillery pieces in real life. So I wonder if they're going to allow us the ability to use these pieces as artillery or not. We already know artillery is in the game, as you can see with this clip here. There's some tanks that have an ability to call in off-map artillery, so the artillery concept is in the game. So I wonder if we're going to be able to use the Su-76s and some other tanks as artillery pieces, rather than as tanks only. It is worth noting that some of these tanks will not be available when tanks first come out. In fact, I would imagine most of these tanks are not going to be available. They might have like 3 or 4 on each country when tanks first come out, because this is still a beta. They still add features slowly. They can't add on all the tanks at once. I mean, they're still even adding planes, and yet there are already tons of planes in this game. But when this game first came out as a beta or an alpha, I guarantee they didn't have very many planes. So it'll be the same situation with tanks. In addition to the tanks listed here, they could also add tanks that are not in this list, because these are preliminary lists. These are not final lists of tanks. They might decide to add another tank that they see because they didn't know about it or whatever. So, like I said, these are preliminary tech trees. But overall, looking at the tank list for both countries, I would say that there are not any tanks in here that I want to be in here, but are not already in here. Every tank that I would want to be in here is in here. So I am very happy about that, especially with this Panther line here. I was about to say Panzer, and it is a Panzer, but Panther, as it's usually called. The only tanks that are missing that I would even want in the game are American, British, and Japanese tanks, of course, right? We don't yet have tech trees for those, so we'll have to wait and see what they'll be bringing out for those tanks. But anyways, for this video, that is going to do it, so I hope you have enjoyed it and found it informative, and I will let you guys know when there are more tank updates, so you can stay here for your tank needs. I am more of a tank driver than a pilot of a plane, so tanks are definitely very interesting to me. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, found it informative, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye guys.